everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Between Sermons. I am your host, Brent, and I don't know. I'm the pastor of Christian Life Center. I don't know what I'm supposed to tell you here at this point, but it's all right. We're going to have some fun today as we are diving deeper into our conversation from Sunday. That's really the purpose of this podcast, is for us to be able to have a chance to turn what looks like a monologue on a Sunday morning where just there's a guy standing on a stage talking at people, and really turn it into a conversation and really dig into how can we make what we're talking about on Sundays more practical for our lives. And since I get tongue-tied so easily, I've got a wonderful co-host with me today, and not our normal co-host, but Tiffany, you are stepping in to Taisha's shoes today.
I am.
Thanks for being here.
Big shoes to follow.
But, I mean, you've done it so well in the past that
thank
I
you.
feel like we're in good hands.
I'm happy to be here.
Yeah.
Good to see you and Sol. I said Sue. Solidar.
Susana.
Susana. Yes, so welcome to Between Sermons. And so I would love for us to recap yesterday's message on El Rohi. And I want to get right into it if you guys are good with that.
Let's go.
Yeah, let's go.
Okay, so what impacted you guys the most from yesterday? Like, what was even sermon prep looking like as you were diving into El Rohi, the Lord's my shepherd?
Yeah, I think that for me, sermon prep is a lot. It's a lot of hours,
Okay.
a lot of studying. Yesterday I made the joke that I could open a sheep farm by this point, and I'm not joking. Like, I watched so many hours of videos of what you need to look in a sheep and what people do to care for sheep. And I think that for me, something that I gather, or something that I learned, which I should have known, but it is one of those that sometimes just the light bulb goes on, is how involved the person that is caring for the sheep really is with the sheep. It is not just I am all the way in the front and they follow me, or like different visuals that sometimes we have, or they like I'm over here and they are doing their thing over there. But as I was watching video after video after video, the shepherd is like walking among the sheep even while they are eating, and they are trying to look for any signs of sickness or parasites, or making sure that they are being fed enough, and like they are so involved that it's like all the time looking at them. Like, I was listening to this lady and she was talking about how she has like 67 sheep, somewhere in there, and she said, I know all of their names, I know all of the temperament, and she's like, and it's important for me because if one of them is not acting normal, I need to be able to know, oh, you little Susie, you're not acting like yourself today.
Right.
You know what's wrong. So it is like all of those things that sometimes you don't think about. Like, the shepherd spends a lot of time with a sheep.
I can see why you can open up that sheep business now, for sure.
No, not happening. No, definitely shooting that one down. We got two dogs that look like sheep sometimes. And but I will say our son was very disappointed when I said no to the sheep herding business. He was really looking forward to that one.
That's funny.
Not sure why or how, but so like the sermon prep for this one, it was harder than usual, I think. And for a few different reasons. It's weird because in one sense, like when I told people that this is my favorite name for God, this has been my favorite name for several years now, where it's just, that's how I identify. And when I look back on my life, Jehovah Rohi, the Lord is my shepherd, like that's just, I mean, David nailed it on the head. Like, David's right. And even Jacob, that's how we introed the message, talking about Jacob's the first one to actually call God a shepherd. And it's like, man, when I look back on my life, like, this is who he is. So in a sense, I was really, really excited for this message.
Okay.
But then as I started the preparation for it, it was rough. Like, I actually had to text several pastor friends, and I'm like, man, you got to pray for me. I'm struggling with this one. Sol would look at me, and she's like, why don't you just do this one on your own? And I'm like, no, the opposite. I need you to do this one on your own.
Because he
I'm
will
struggling.
come to me, he's like, I think that I want to do, and he will say, I want to do this, and I want to do that. And I'm like, well, it seems like you are having like a path to run, so just go.
Yeah, no, I'm literally coming to my wife for help, and she's like, "Okay, why don't you just do it on your own?" I'm like, "That's not help.
Right.
That's
You
not.
got it.
That's
You
not
got
what
it.
I'm looking for." But and one of the people that I texted was my dad, and I was just like, "Hey, I'm really struggling with this one," and I gave a line that he's given out before, where it's like, "Hey, sometimes a preacher is preaching because it's Sunday and it's your job, and sometimes a preacher is preaching because there's a message is burning in you to communicate." And so I used that line back on him. I'm like, "Man, I feel like this is just a work Sunday." And he's like, "No, I've heard what you want to talk about. I know your heart behind this message." He's like, "I know that's just an attack of the enemy, kind of a moment trying to discourage you. Don't listen to it. Like, just push through." And I'm glad that he gave me that advice. But man, at the same time, I'm like, this one was hard to do. And there's a few different reasons I could get into why this one was hard, but we'll save that maybe for some of the other conversation we're gonna have.
Okay.
But yeah,
Well, first I would say I love that you have wisdom around you
yes,
to be able to be sensitive to the Holy Spirit to say, I don't think that's it. Because if something was to burden you this much, if this was a life verse, this is the Lord is my shepherd, and then for you to not be able to dive into it as deep, then I for sure would see like, this is an attack of the enemy, because it's been a burden too long for it to just not be able to. But God, like, wanting you to, no, let's dig a little bit deeper into this. And then like what came from it was just a powerful message from the both of you. So
yeah, and I think what finally came together, our heart behind this message, and I would love if you didn't hear the message, go back, watch it. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are CLC Tinley, and catch up on all that stuff. But the way we structured the message, it really was just a walk through Psalm 23, where David says, "The Lord is my shepherd," and being able to identify, okay, David is the expert in this regard. Like, David was a shepherd,
right,
which was, honestly, it was not a glamorous job. It wasn't a job that anybody wanted. In fact, in David's time, shepherds were usually female, which was not a normal occupation. And for women to have jobs, it was simply because it was nobody else wanted to do it. It was the hardest job, and it was the job that took you away from the family. Shepherds were often like not allowed to participate in like Jewish festivals and Jewish celebrations, because the time that they were spending with the sheep would make them unclean. The things that they had to do made them labeled as unclean. And so like shepherds were just kind of looked down on. And so David is a shepherd because he's the youngest son. Like, all the other brothers have more important jobs. They're all fighting in war. David has to stay back and watch the sheep because he had no sisters, apparently.
right,
And so like it's not this like glamorous role. But then David, as a king, he's looking back on his life, and he writes this psalm not in the time of being a shepherd, but in his time as a king, looking back on his life and looking back on who God is. And he's like, the same way I was caring for my sheep, God's been caring for me.
wow.
And so there's just something beautiful about Psalm 23, about the perspective of a shepherd didn't identify himself as a fellow shepherd in the story.
right,
David identified himself as the sheep, and the Lord is the shepherd. And so it's so beautiful. And so just being able to just walk through what Psalm 23 means, and those first 4 verses. And I mean, it's 4 verses, but we could have probably talked. I think we preached for like 45, 50 minutes. It was a longer message. But I think we probably could have gone for another 2 hours just talking about those 4 verses. There's so much in it.
Yeah.
So much in it. I think something that stood out for me even in that was Pastor Sol, when you were talking about rest. And I don't know about anyone else, but it's so hard sometimes to rest in those green pastures.
Yeah.
And even as you were saying, I mean, we're talking about, you've been to Israel. There isn't just green pastures,
Yes.
just everywhere. So then what is David talking about when he leads us to green pastures? So it could be tough, but he is a great guide, and he wants you to rest in that. And so I had to just reflect on the spaces that I've been in, and even now, like, how much do I rest and how much do I take the hands off? And same with being able to identify with Psalm 23. I remember a time where I had to take every verse and just take it as it is and wake up like, the Lord is my shepherd. I have all that I need, you know?
Yep.
And so the impact of, like, you could just stay there.
Yeah.
That one verse, you know, kind of thing. But that really still with me, or just impressed on my heart about that rest in him. And so, no, thank you guys. Thank you for that. I think it touched a lot of people. We were talking out even in our staff meeting today of how some people really walked away from the message so impacted by the revelation that God gave you guys. So,
and
awesome.
I think that the whole rest thing, it is difficult for us. You know, we are, especially in this time, people are just used to go, and do more and do more and do more and do more. And that leaves us physically exhausted, but also emotionally drained, because we are putting so much of ourselves into everything that we do, and then it comes the perfectionism, and then it comes the expectations of people, and then it comes all of the stuff that we are just walking around depleted, like we have nothing, when God is trying to lead us, you know, into rest. And I think that's why for me that the phrase "He makes me" was like he's saying, just do it already. You know, you have everything that you need. And that was to me like the eye-opening moment, because the whole green pastures, when you think about the lush green grass, and, you know, like you can see as far as the eye can see, it's all green, it's all pretty. But when you think of Israel, and there's just rocks and just a little bit of grass kind of in between some rocks, understanding that God wants you to be satisfied and restful today. And I think that sometimes we look at the brown fields and just the little specks of grass, and we panic because we want,
it's not enough.
We want the assurance of, I'm gonna be okay forever, and God is saying, fix your eyes on me, and you will be fine. But when you just look out and you see all of the rocks, and you just see a tiny little bit of green, you freak out. You're like, but tomorrow, like, what am I gonna eat tomorrow? And he has said in the Bible time and time again, don't worry about tomorrow, you know, because tomorrow is gonna take care of itself. Just worry about today. And I think that is something that is very important for us to understand, is that the good shepherd knows what you're gonna need tomorrow. So just trust him today. And I think that sometimes we end up even more tired and even more exhausted in every single area of our lives, because we are not focusing on today. We are focusing on every single other day. And at least that happens to me. You know, when I see something that comes, like I'm trying to make sure that everything is gonna be okay for forever. And then I end up missing today. And I am exhausted today, and I am depressed today because I don't have tomorrow. And God is just like, just focus on today and lay down. Just sit.
Sometimes he's like, just go to sleep.
Just stop.
Go to
I mean,
sleep.
the number of times we find Jesus taking a nap in the Gospels should be a pretty good indication that, you know, when there's chaos around you, maybe you just need to take a nap.
Completely unbothered how the Lord was. And then just thinking about, and you guys, if you want to share more, when you were talking about King David, of where he had to be in this like awakening from coming from being a shepherd into a king, and writing as a king and identifying as a sheep. Like, I just wonder what space that he came to with that, because I know you mentioned even in the message about a lot of times we take this chapter and it can be a little somber, but looking at it from a place of praise, that he became content. Like, just like where was the place that he got to in this contentment of his life? And so, yes, would you?
That's one of the things that I love about Psalm 23, and a lot of scholars will talk about this, that that David is uniquely qualified to write this psalm. If you look at the entire psalm, and actually I had some people that were like, why'd you stop at verse 4? Like, it gets so good, and the sets a table in the presence of my enemies, and my cup is overflowing, and he anoints my head with oil. Why'd you guys stop at 4?
Because
and it's
it
like,
was gonna be 5-hour message.
no, we stopped at 4 because the message was about Jehovah Rohi,
Yeah.
the shepherd. Verse 5 isn't about a shepherd anymore. And this is why Psalm 23 is so uniquely beautiful, is that David can write it from the perspective of the shepherd, but also from the perspective of a king. And so in verse 5, it shifts. And now we're not outside in a field with the Lord my shepherd. Now we're inside of a home, and it's the Lord as my host. He's the one that is hosting me in his palace. And David would have been very familiar with that process as well as a king, right? And so when somebody comes in your home, you're setting up a banquet, you're setting up a feast for them, you're anointing their head with oil. It was a common practice at the time that when a guest came to your home, they were weary from the travel, and the oil was there to give them refreshing. It was like a soothing thing. And it was also a thing of honor. And then you would fill their cup. And if you wanted to be extravagant, you're filling it to overflowing. And so like all of a sudden this analogy is no longer about sheep and a field. And so we had to stop there. But that's part of what makes Psalm 23, like I said, so cool, is that David's probably the only person in our biblical knowledge that could have written from that perspective. To be able to say, I know what it's like for a shepherd to care for sheep. I also know what it's like for a very important wealthy person to host people in their home. Like your average shepherd wouldn't be able to relate to the banquet feast kind of mentality. And so David is it's such a beautiful thing, but it's unique to David in the sense that David has the humility as king to say, I'm not the shepherd. I have a shepherd. And as the king, I'm not the host. I have a host. Right. And that's why I even pointed out the week before that it's David that says the phrase, and the Lord said to my Lord. Just that phrase right there, the King of Israel is saying, the Lord, Yahweh, is saying to my Adonai. King David shouldn't have an Adonai. There shouldn't be a Lord over David. If he's king, he's top dog. But even in the humility of David as king, he recognizes, no, God is way more kingly than I am. He is the King of kings. He is the Lord of lords. And while people will probably call David Adon, they'll call him a Lord, he's like, I'm not Adonai. I have an Adonai. And so like there's just this perspective that David has of both worlds, but also the humility that he has to be able to say, no. It's about God. It's not about me. And so then we're left with this incredible psalm that shows us how God cares for us and protects us and provides for us and leads us if we will just follow.
And I think that it's also his journey. There's a lot of controversy on when he actually wrote it. Like where was he? What was happening in his life at the moment? And I don't know, but he had experienced so much, like he had to be on the run because Saul was trying to kill him, and then he finally takes the throne, and he's finally the king, and then his son is trying to kill him so that he can be so it's like so much happening in his life. So with that perspective of pain and heartbreak and betrayal, he's still able to say, I have everything that I need, and I am satisfied. And and I can rest, and he's restoring my soul. Like being able to even say, in all of this that I am experiencing, he is still my good shepherd. Like it is. I think that it is beautiful.
Covered and protected.
Covered
and protected. I love that. So Pastor Sol, yesterday you were talking about this year 2024, like it's had some valleys.
Like I'm ready for New Year's Eve. Let's change the pace.
She's like, pop out the orange juice because I cannot wait
for
2025.
I cannot wait.
So you were mentioning about those valleys and what this just year has been. For any people that may be out there maybe dealing with some valleys, how have you both been able to navigate this year with those valleys, ways, and maybe you're still walking through how to do that, but if there are any ways that you can kind of share that would help people to practice and apply when you're in that place, in that valley, and needing that rest? How have you guys been walking this out, and how can you help others?
Whew, that's a loaded question. Yeah, it has been a lot. There has been some stuff with family, with some family's health, with some just family's choices, and a lot of things that just leave you just broken, you know. And I wish I could tell you that I'm on the other side, but I'm not. Like I'm still there. And I think it was part of what Brent was saying. It was so hard to do this message because it was Saturday. We were about to go to a soccer game, and I am literally like trembling. I'm crying, and I'm like, there's just so much fear and over tomorrow, you know. And I had to pull back and just remember, you know, and start preaching to myself. And I think that's something that I do quite a bit at this time, is just preach to myself, you know. What there's so many times that I'm like, okay, if somebody came to you with this situation, what would you say? What have you said to people? What have you said, you know, when somebody said, hey, I have this issue? And I think that what I can tell you is that it's in moments like this where you have to get closer to God. And I think that sometimes in our pain and in our suffering, we tend to isolate ourselves because we feel like nobody will understand. Nobody will be with me or run with me or pray with me. And sometimes in that distance, you actually distance yourself from God.
Yeah.
And I think that for me, it has been just such a beautiful growing experience to say, I can't do it, but you can. And even getting to the point of, I don't know what tomorrow will bring, but I know that you're here with me today.
Yeah.
And it is understanding that green pasture, you know, like I had to stop trying to worry and try to fix tomorrow. And that has been really, really difficult because I just want the perfect picture done.
Yeah.
I just want the perfect picture done. And I think that's something that I have realized in this season is that I have to give up my Instagram worthy picture of what I thought my life was going to be and just embrace the goodness of God today with wherever it is that I'm seeing. So what I've been doing personally is reading the Word of God, understanding who God is in my pain, you know, and seeing God in everything that is happening because He's been there. And I think that that's why I was able to talk about, you know, even when I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil because you are with me.
Yeah.
And I wish I would say that I never fear, but that's not true. But in the moments that I feel afraid, I have to remind myself, look, that He is with you. And find all of the little moments in this day where you have seen the hand of God. And when you do, you will find it.
Yeah.
You will find, like, there's so many times that I just feel like I'm just broken right now. I just need something, God. I just need you to at least, like, just a wink, just that I know that you're there. And then one of my kids will come or something will happen, and it's just like God was there, you know. So let's start crying. Oh Lord, this podcast is getting real, people. I think that it is understanding that it can be very dark and it can be very uncomfortable, and it can be something that you don't want to experience and you don't want anybody else to ever experience it again. But He's with you. Yeah. And if He's with you, you can handle it. Yeah. Because it is not your strength. It is not even you, the one that is handling it. You're just the sheep that is following. Yeah. And that you know that in every step of the way, He's going to care for you. Yeah. And we all want sunny days, you know, and beautiful pictures, but
it's not how it works.
But the valleys are gonna be there, and the dark moments are gonna be there. But it is what you're choosing to focus on, what is gonna take you to the next part. if you focus on God and you focus on growing and getting closer to Him and relinquishing the control of your life and of the picture that you wanted, because nobody wants the picture of the valley of the shadow of the death.
Absolutely,
that is not what you want to see when you look at your life. But when you relinquish that and you say, okay, God, this is where we are walking today.
Yeah.
I just have to trust you that you know why we're walking through here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that old phrase. If you're going through hell, don't stop. like that's the idea. I think that David is getting at is though I walk through the valley, like
Right.
though means it happens, but I'm gonna walk through this valley. And there was times in that shepherding journey where he probably had to take his sheep along some paths that they didn't want to walk. Like it was like this is where the robbers can hide. This is where the wolves can hide. And the shepherd is saying, no, we've got to go through this because we have to get to someplace. Like there's a purpose to it. And that's the thing that always helps me is that I know that good can come from the worst things. And so if the Lord is leading me through something, I need to trust Him that it's for my good. Or it's for the benefit of others. But there's going to be something good that is going to be brought about because of this. And so, yeah, right there with you, it's not fun. It's not pleasant. I think on Saturday you were on the verge of a full-blown panic attack. And it's funny. I love that you said, you gotta preach to yourself. Because that's basically what I did as we were leaving the house. I was like, Sol, change the channel. Which is something we've preached. We've team taught. In fact, it's something we started teaching our kids, and then we're like, hey, this is probably better for like the congregation than it is just for our kids. And so we started teaching this whole idea of, hey, change the channel. Like when your mind is so fixated on one thing, you've got to come in there and you've got to change the channel. And some people are like, well, I can't help what I'm thinking about. You absolutely can. You choose what to think about. And sometimes it's easier than others.
Right.
But you do have a choice to refocus your attention. That's why the Bible tells us to choose to think about these things, the things that are beautiful. And if we will make that choice to change the channel, then we can refocus on God and in this journey. And so it was one of those where my heart was breaking as the husband, seeing my wife hurting. But at the same time, I was also became very proud of you in that moment because I saw you bring it back together, breathe, saw you change the channel, and then on Sunday you were able to be on the stage and
everything that was happening in my head was, even though I walked through a valley of shadow, that I will fear no evil because you were with me. Like I kept just saying, like I was remembering everything that I was going to be talking about, and I'm like, I guess I had to experience it first, huh? Like, here we go. Like, here we go. We're not talking about something we don't know. And yeah, it's not fun, but if you are in that position, I just want to encourage you to push closer to God. Yeah. Don't push God away. Don't, I think that it is very easy to go into the why me and the where are you, God? He is with you. Yeah. So instead of trying to pass blame onto God, just push into Him.
Yeah.
It's a good song.
When we were in Kenya in February on a missions trip, of course, there are just all kinds of things everywhere. But I noticed with different farmers, I would see sheep. And so sometimes when we would be driving, you'd see all these sheep, but I wouldn't see a shepherd. And so our tour guide was, even if you don't see it, trust me, that shepherd is close by. Yeah. So even if someone, there is no kind of stealing someone's sheep, that shepherd is for sure close by, watching. Even if we didn't see the shepherd there. And so just again, that beautiful protection of God's covering and His protection as a shepherd of, we didn't know, but he could see us. Yeah. He could see us.
He was watching.
He was watching for sure. Yeah. Are there any takeaways that you guys would have from the message that you'd like to share and share with others?
Well, I think the biggest one we tried to hit in the message, and I would just kind of encourage people to lean into it, is if he's the shepherd who's leading, then we need to be the sheep that follow. And I think that so much of what the shepherd does is based on the sheep's ability to follow. Right? So like if the shepherd is leading you to beside still waters, but you're not following him, you're not going to get the still waters. If the shepherd is leading you to green pastures and you're not following him, guess what? You don't get the green pastures.
Yeah.
And if he's the one that's looking over you to protect you, but you've wandered off, like how can he protect you if you're not a part of the fold? And so like it all comes down to, if he's leading, we have to follow. And if he's the shepherd, then we're the sheep. And so I would just really lean on people that if there's an area of your life where I love that he said that you lead me along the path of righteousness for my name's sake. And what I love about that is a couple things. One, I didn't even get into on Sunday, but
I'm like, please share, please.
When he says
for your name's sake.
for your name's sake. Sorry, I said for my. What that's saying is God is putting his own name on the line. Like, and this is to bring him honor and glory. And so if he fails as a shepherd, it looks bad on him. So I can trust that he's going to do these things, that I can trust him that the path of righteousness is good for me, because it doesn't do any good for anybody for God to make himself look bad. Right. And so he's putting his name on the line. And so and we need to follow that path of righteousness. And that is what I was able to talk about a little bit, that, that path of righteousness, it's that well-worn path. Like, it's the path of safety. And so, the shepherd is leading the sheep along these paths, but there are grooves that are worn into the land. There's some paths that the shepherd knows, hey, this is the journey we're going to take. And maybe the journey takes a month, but we're going to loop back around and we're going to come back through the same path, because by the time we come back around, there's new grass that's grown. Right? And so they constantly are leading them along similar paths, or the same paths that have been well worn, that are paths of safety, right? Because they're well worn, now we're not stumbling, we're not tripping, we're not falling. It's for our protection. And so for us, the parallel, and David talks about this all the time, about God's word have I hidden in my heart. And David is he's the one that's like, man, the law brings life, and the law I find comfort in God's law. Well, he's tying that into this path of righteousness, and he's saying, look, God's laws, his commands over my life, they're for my benefit, they're for my good. And when we choose to be independent and say, man, I don't need to follow that, I'm gonna trailblaze, I'm gonna make my own path, there's a way that seems right to a man that leads to death. And that's what happens to us when we get off of the path of righteousness. And so if you're listening to this and you're like, okay, how do I apply the Lord as my shepherd to my life? It's those two things. First, if he's leading, you got to follow, which means you need to stay to the path of righteousness. And when you get off of that path, that's when problems happen.
Yeah, and for me, I think that is the trust. You have to trust God with your life. He cares for you. He is involved in every aspect of your life, even if you feel it or you don't feel it, if you see it or you don't see it, he is there. So you just have to trust that he has you. And I think that we tend to wander off, and we tend to fall off the path and take our eyes off of the shepherd when we start lacking trust.
Yes.
Yeah.
But if you choose to trust in him no matter what, because sometimes we trust depending on outcome. Even if it was good for me, or if it was something that I wanted, then I trust God, right? But if it's not what I wanted, if my prayer wasn't answered, then I'm not trusting anymore. I think that's not right. We cannot trust God conditionally.
Yeah.
Right.
We have to trust that God knows what he's doing. And if that prayer wasn't answered the way that you thought, you have to trust that there's a reason for it.
Yeah.
If the plan didn't work out the way that you thought it was going to be, you have to trust. You have to trust him. So when you trust him, then you will walk on his way. When you trust them, then you will want to be closer to him. When you trust them, you're going to want to hear from him. When you don't trust somebody, you don't care what they have to say.
No, that's real. Yeah.
That trust piece, that's huge. I love that you pointed that out. how do we build that trust though? Like how do we get to a place where, because I think that is that sign of maturity, right? When it's like, hey, I don't just trust you because good things have happened in the past when I trusted you. Like I trust you even when, from my perspective, something bad happened. Mm-hmm. But I trust you that you've got something I don't. Mm-hmm. Like that trust for the sheep is saying, look, I want to go over there, but I know that you're leading me over there. So I'm just going to trust that what's at the end of this journey, what's way down there that I don't see and I don't know, I'm trusting you that it's better than what I see right over here. Mm-hmm. But how do we get to that place?
I think that at least for me, it is a twofold. One, it is by experience. You have seen him come through time and time again in your own life, but also by third-party experience. You know, you read the Bible and you see that he has been faithful. You read the word and you see all of the lengths that he went to get you, to rescue you. You see his faithfulness throughout centuries. You go to other people and you hear their stories and you see how God has been there for them. You know, so I think that it is personal experience and other people's experience. That, you know, there are from friends and accounts on the Bible, and then you can understand that he has always been true to his word.
Yeah. I was thinking the same thing of like, if I was a new Christian and I didn't know where to start on this trust thing, is the people around me of like, I don't know what this is, but can you share with me some stories of like how you've seen and been able to trust God? Because I don't know the Bible like that, but I've surrendered, like I'm becoming him as Lord. But how do I build that? And even if there was nothing that I knew yet or could see in my life, I could ask people. And then of course they also pointing to the Bible of this, but like I have for sure seen God take me from this space of not trusting. This did not go the way that I thought it was going to go, to him taking me to like, has everything changed? No, but my perspective along the way, I have had people fiercely pray for me and pray for him. Like those kind of things that like, he's trustworthy. The people around me really trust him. And I trust that they will fervently root me on in this process. And so that community thing, I think also will help people who don't know what trust looks like yet, or feel trust has been broken.
The Bible says, you know, like they overcame by the blood of the Lamb and the word of the testimony. So it is important for people who have a testimony, that where you have experienced God in any way, share that with other people. You have no idea how much you can be building somebody up. When somebody's just feeling like it is never gonna work for me, but then you hear somebody say, but God did this in my life, it kind of starts fueling a little bit of expectancy to say, if he did it for you, he can do it for me. So I think that it is very important. I think that sometimes we downplay the things that God does, or you just keep it to ourselves, when it is very important for us to communicate that.
I don't know if this will help anybody, because this is one of those Brent's a weird person probably kind of moments. But for me, like, I trust God fully because I am fully convinced that he's God. And if he's actually God, I'm not. And if he's God, then he knows way more. Like if we look at this, okay, omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent. Like if this is the real God, the God we see in Scripture, if he really exists, then why would I question him? Why would I not trust him? Why would I fight the system? If what I read in my Bible is real, and I've been fully convinced that God is God. So I'm putting my trust in him, and the outcome, honestly, and this is the part where it's like, this is harder for other people, but this is where I am. But if he's fully God, the outcomes don't matter. And I could be trusting him for my healing and still be sick and still trust him. Right? I can be going through something with family and it doesn't get resolved the way I want it to be resolved. But I still trust him. Because he's God and he has a perspective that I don't get. I don't have his perspective. You know, the Bible talks about how his ways are so far above our ways. Like, who are we to, like, I love when Job is like, getting so self-righteous, and he's mouthing off to his friends, and he's just like, you don't even understand. And he calls out God, and then God shows up and he's like, hey, where were you when I formed the mountains?
Right.
Do you know how lightning works? I speak this thing into existence. Like, God just shows up and is like, yeah, just remember, Job, I'm God and you're not.
Right.
And so, like, I read his story and I'm like, God, don't let me ever make that mistake. Don't let me ever get into a place where I'm not trusting you because I think I know better. I want to get into a place where it's like, God, it doesn't matter the outcome. It doesn't matter the track record, like all of that. Like, yes, that's good. It builds up faith and all of that. But at the end of the day, if I'm sick, he's God. And if I'm healed, he's God. And if I'm not healed, he's God. And if everything is provided the way that I want it, he's God. And if nothing is provided the way that I want it, he's God. Like, he's God. I'm not. My job is to follow and be submitted to him. And I guess I've just gotten to this place in my life where I'm so fully convinced of that, man, yeah, there's things in life that suck. There's things in life that I wish were different. But it's not affecting my faith. Like, I trust him.
And I think that when you said Job, the phrase that I love that he said was, would I only take the good from God and not the bad?
Yeah.
You know, like, am I only going to be okay with God if he gives me good things?
Right.
And not with him when life is not okay?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah,
Which
tough.
even brings back to why the Lord allowed, like, for Job to be tried and tested.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun. Our journey with the Good Shepherd is it's a fun journey. But I do want to reiterate what I had said in the message, that he's good at his job.
Yeah.
And, like, his job as the shepherd is to lead, protect, and provide. And so he's really good at leading if you'll follow.
Yeah.
He's really good at providing if you'll follow. He's really good at protecting if you'll follow.
That's true.
I was at a women's Bible study, and some people were sharing just where they were. And this mantra that I have to remember too is that God is like the best event planner. Like, nobody's beating God.
Yeah.
Like, he just is.
He's got this.
He like the best one. And so I have to remember, he is not surprised by this event. He always has a plan.
Yeah.
Always, God. So help me to trust that you, as the best one, you already, and you know the outcome, and you know every step in the play of how I can, like, move toward you, and trust that you have a plan. Yeah. He just has a plan.
Yeah. Trust him.
There was one more thing that I put as a takeaway from me, because of what you said, and the demeanor, how sometimes when we listen to the message or that passage and we can kind of get sad. I'm like, I want to hear more of a tone of praise with that. And so more praise songs, you know, that are like, you know, in this tone when you're reading it, like, the Lord is my shepherd, you know, even when I walk through this kind of, I mean, I feel like
Psalm 23
Christian
with some
rappers
energy.
do that, right? But to hear
You
that.
need to write it, Tiff. You need to write it. You need to sing it, you know.
Because the tone, like, he was just reassuring himself over and over again. And so I'm like, I want to see more of that in that tone said and sung and stuff. So
I think, and this is one of those, how does Pastor Carlton put it? My sanctified imagination or something, like, I forget how he calls it, but it's like, I got no scripture for this or no historical evidence for this, but I think in my glorified imagination, I think is how he puts it. In my glorified imagination, David is smiling when he's writing Psalm 23, because when he's looking back, you lead me beside still waters.
Oh, he knows what that is.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
There's contentment.
Like, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Like, I just, man, it's like, and we read this psalm at funerals, and everybody's crying, and this is my shepherd, and it's so hard, and it's so rough, and it's just, but I think that David is like, no, like, God loves me enough to lead me, to care for me, to protect me, and his rod and his staff, man, I'm comforted by the shepherd. I think that's, man, I don't know. I think that I probably picture David spending some nights cuddled up with a sheep. Like, oh, you're my favorite. Like, scratching his head. Like, I don't know, man. But my glorified imagination goes wild on this one.
Very
but
It's
Yeah,
okay.
It's good. I think I'm with you. I think that we need some praise songs, some upbeat, some energetic, some
happy.
Put some
Yeah.
smile
Happy
on your face because the Lord is my shepherd. This is good news, not bad news.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's life, not death.
Yes.
Yeah, I second the motion.
Yeah. All right, Tiff, write it.
Done.
They
Okay.
need to write it.
Well, thank you guys so much. I'm so happy that I got to be a part of this today.
Yeah. Before we wrap up, though, Taisha always gives me a chance to nerd out, and
Okay.
I have
Here
to.
we go.
I have
Here
to.
we go.
So when we talked about how this was a hard one for me to prepare, here's the real answer to that.
Okay.
And not that my other answer wasn't real, but this is just like the
bonus answer.
the thing that was like the thorn in my side, and Sol was like, "Don't do that. Don't ruin it for people." But I'm going.
Please do it.
I love you, but I'm gonna ruin this for you. So when I prepare a message, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll get a verse, I'll get a passage, and I'll study it. I'll write down my thoughts. I'll highlight certain words or things that stand out to me. It's Bible study, and it's usually for my benefit more than the congregation's. And then from there, I start pulling out my thoughts, my ideas. I start remembering things from my past and other things I've heard preached, and I'll do all this stuff. And when it came to Psalm 23, I started doing that. I started pulling out all these incredible, because every preacher has preached Psalm 23. So I started pulling out all these things that I had heard before, like, that the shepherd would break the legs of the sheep so that, if they were stubborn and would always wander off, they'd break the legs so the sheep would have to ride on his shoulders, and he'd be close to the heartbeat, and he would hold them close, and like, it was all this stuff. And then, he leads me beside still waters, because sheep, they won't drink from rapid waters, and, the laying down in green pastures and these beautiful fields, and we find comfort and rest, and there's food all around us, but we're still sleeping because everything's been satisfied. And sheep are so stupid, and people are stupid, and people are like sheep, and like all these things I've heard preached over and over and over again. So, have you never heard a sermon where the preacher's like, sheep are dumb? Or like, sheep is such a perfect analogy for Christians because sheep cannot survive without a shepherd, and we can't survive without God, and like using all this stuff. Man, I wrote down all those things that I'm like, I've heard this before. This is what I've heard preached. I've talked about these things before. And then I fact checked myself.
Okay.
And that's where I discovered that all of those things are lies. None of those things are true.
Or at least exaggerated claims.
Or extremely exaggerated claims. So like, are sheep stupid? I mean, sometimes they're not the most intelligent. They are animals. However, they're actually highly trainable. Yeah. Sheep actually demonstrate like amazing qualities of intelligence in the sense that like they can be trained to do certain things at certain vocal commands. They recognize, I think it's up to like 10 different faces. So like if their shepherd walks by versus a stranger walks by.
And voices.
They're like, and voices. They're like, nope, that's my shepherd. That's not. So like the shepherd could have an audible command for the sheep that they'll follow. A stranger can give the exact same command and the sheep won't follow it because they've been trained to follow that voice, not that voice. And it's like, so like they actually demonstrate super high intelligence. Now they're stubborn, which makes them appear stupid because they're like, nah, I'm doing what I want to do. Okay. But then like, and they also have a tendency to follow. So like I read one article that's so sad, but it's still kind of funny. So I laughed at it, but it's really sad. It was like, I think I got to find the article, but I think it was like Italian shepherds were leading their flock, and they went into a town to have lunch. And while they're having lunch, they just left the flock on the hillside. Apparently, on the opposite side of the hillside was a cliff, and one of the sheep walked off the cliff.
No, don't say it. Don't finish that.
And then...
Where's my happy ending?
Because sheep have a tendency to follow.
Oh.
Sheep number 2 went off the cliff. Sheep number 3 went off the cliff. I think the article, I got to find it, but I think it's like 1,500 sheep went off of this cliff. They're all dying up until the last like 400 of them literally survived the fall by landing on the other dead sheep.
Wow.
I shouldn't laugh.
No.
I know this is bad. And like it reminds me of the whole like cast down sheep, like sheep stuck on their back, which is actually true,
It is true.
which does happen. it's a really funny image, but they literally, like, in a few hours, like, they can die, the gases build up. And so, like, shepherds literally, like, I watched one video of a farmer that was like, hey, if you ever see a sheep, like, you're driving down the road, you see a sheep that's on his back, like, do that farmer.
Their backs are like flat.
They're too flat.
They're
yeah,
too
so
flat,
they can't get like
rotate.
the momentum to rotate, especially if their fur or their wool is too long. So like this farmer was like, look, do them a favor, like get out of your car, tip that sheep back over. Like you might be saving their life if the shepherd didn't notice. But like I kept coming across all these things that I'd been taught or I'd heard a preacher say that just weren't true. Like they don't break the legs of the lambs because if they did, the lamb has a long memory and will hold a grudge. And so that sheep is never going to trust that shepherd again because it's like, you're the dude that broke my leg, because they recognize the face and they recognize the voice. With a baseball bat. you broke my leg, you jerk. Right?
Oh,
like,
this is getting so bad.
The rushing water thing. Like I heard this one preached multiple times. Like the sheep will only drink from still waters. And so when God leads us beside still waters, because that's the only thing that will bring us. It's not true at all. Like I watched a video of like a bunch of sheep drinking from a river that was rushing, but I also saw one video of a sheep, literally, this goes back to their intelligence. The sheep was turning on the water faucet in the sink in the shed and drinking directly from the faucet. And the farmer would turn the faucet off and the sheep would get mad and turn it back on. Like 5 or 6 times the sheep is turning on the faucet.
I'm telling you, we need a sheep farm. We need to see all of this happen.
So it was just, but it was one of those things that I'm like, man, all these things that I thought about sheep, it isn't true. It isn't real. Right down to the biggest thing. Like I had so many sermons where it was, sheep cannot survive without a shepherd. And I'm like, man, that preaches so well, because we can't survive without our shepherd. We can't survive without Jesus. And like, I read a whole farming thread where they're like, whoever told you that is an idiot. There's literally wild sheep. like there are sheep all over the place that can survive just fine without a shepherd. They shed their wool on a regular basis when the climate changes. Like it's totally a normal thing. We've just genetically engineered sheep to be dependent on shepherds because we're trying to get something from them. Like, oh, okay. So like in my sermon prep, I was like, well, I can't preach that. I can't preach that. I can't preach that. I can't preach that. That's not true. That's not right. Man, I got mad. That was like, I kept looking at Sol. I'm like, nope, can't use it. Nope, it's not real. Nope, it's not a thing.
But I think that with all of that, to make the happy package, let's bring all of that to a happy package.
Yes.
You never let me just end on a sour note.
No.
That's why people like you.
We need a happy package.
That's why people like Sol a lot better.
And put the bow on top.
Make it pretty.
I think that that is why it's so important for us to understand that what Jesus does for us is that leading, that protecting, and that providing.
Yeah.
You know, because I always think of the phrase that, you know, the Bible says that Jesus had compassion for the multitudes because they were like sheep without a shepherd.
Yep.
So basically he's looking at all of these people and saying, who's protecting you?
Yeah.
Who's providing for you?
Who's leading you?
Who's leading you?
Yeah.
You know, so can you be without Jesus? Sure.
Right.
But trying to deal with life with Jesus is hard. Trying to do it without him, when you don't have the hope, when you don't have the protection, when you don't have the comfort, when you don't have the person that can grab all of the broken pieces and restore you.
Yeah.
Why would anyone want that?
Yeah.
You know, so when Jesus sees the multitudes without him, he's saying, who is with you? Mm-hmm. So I think that for us, we have a beautiful shepherd that is making our life much better, even if our life is not perfect.
Yeah.
On this side of eternity.
Yeah.
You know, but he's with us.
Yeah.
So I think that's where we can find the comfort and the joy and the happy, is that all of those things might not be true, but his leading, his protection, and his provision, they are.
Yep.
Yes.
Which is why when we finally settled on this message, we taught the things that we taught, because it was things that we could verify.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, we're not trying to add things to the text that aren't there, and we're not trying to stretch truths that aren't all that true. We're sticking to, okay, David made this analogy for a reason. And David is the expert. He was a shepherd. He knows the relationship between shepherd and sheep. What is David pointing out, and why is David pointing it out?
Right.
And so for us to be able to recognize there is something beautiful. We don't have to add to it. We don't have to get preachy with it. Like we don't have to go all imagination and out there. Like the text is beautiful.
Yeah.
Like just teach that. And that's where we finally was like, okay, we're walking through Psalm 23.
And he's happy and he's hopeful.
Yeah. And he is a good shepherd.
Yeah.
And we are sheep that sometimes wander, which is why he leaves the 99 to find the one.
And whack us on the head.
And that's why he's got a staff, because sometimes you need a good whack on the head.
Yeah.
All right, that
Awesome.
was good. Sorry, I had to rant. And
Please do.
Sol doesn't like my rantings, but you made it. You made it beautiful. You made it. High five for you.
Yes.
Way to go. That's why we make a good
Beautiful.
team. I can be Debbie Downer, and then you can bring the life and the energy, and it's great. It's awesome. Good balance. Beautiful. Well, hey, thanks for hanging out with us for this episode of Between Sermons. If you didn't watch the message yet, please go and take a listen to it on YouTube or wherever you're watching this podcast. I'm sure you can get that message as well. Like, subscribe, do all the things that you need to do to keep the algorithms going. Help us get this message out to other people. We need more people to recognize that Jesus is the good shepherd, that God is the Lord, my shepherd. He's the one that's leading us, protecting us, providing for us. So share this with somebody that needs some encouragement today. Tell them, Pastor Brent's a little rough around the edges. He's going to be a little bit of a downer, but Pastor Sol's there too, and she's got so much life and energy and hope. So just, share this one, and we'll see you on the next episode.